Fatigue, muscle pain, tooth loss, broken bones. These symptoms may all seem disconnected, but one rare disease may be behind them all.
As a multisystemic disease that can affect many areas of the body, it can often be overlooked or not correctly diagnosed until later in life.
Today, understanding the patient experience, what is being done to support the affected community, and how a simple blood test can provide answers.
Let's go behind the mystery of hypophosphatasia, or HPP.
I was diagnosed with hypophosphatasia before I was 2 years old. Luckily, it was caught early because that's not always the case. So growing up, HPP affected my bones, my muscles, my teeth. I had impaired kidney function. It was still good even though I had all these medical problems. So when I turned 18, I aged out of the Children's Hospital, and they told us that since I was done growing, it was a pediatric disease, it really wouldn't affect me later in life. Later in my late 20s, I started getting symptoms, and they were always diagnosed as something else or brushed off as something else. I had no idea what I was experiencing was HPP. It took almost 20 years to get re-diagnosed as an adult.
Hypophosphatasia, or HPP, is an inherited multisystemic rare metabolic disorder that may progress over time. It is caused by a change in the ALPL gene, leading to persistently low levels of an important enzyme known as alkaline phosphatase, or ALP. Alkaline phosphatase is needed to maintain adequate bone and teeth mineralization, as well as maintain the neurological system and the renal system. If the alkaline phosphatase enzyme is persistently low, this can lead to the development of weak or brittle bones, which in turn can lead to many of the manifestations of patients with HPP, and this includes frequent bone injuries, premature tooth loss, mobility issues, headaches, fatigue, and respiratory issues in infants and children. Even though HPP is an inherited disorder, genetic testing is not required for the diagnosis of HPP. It can be made by persistently low levels of ALP in addition to one or more symptoms.
So they didn't know that HPP ran in our family until I came along. My mom was actually the one that passed it on to me. And looking back, there were a lot of subtle symptoms, like she had headaches and she had foot pain. And then later in life, she started breaking ankles and feet, but she was never diagnosed. So we were told that I would not pass the disease down to my children any more severe than I had it. My childhood wasn't really bad, even though I had surgeries. It was still a good childhood, so we didn't think too much about if we passed it on, because it wasn't going to be any worse than what I had. And it really didn't dawn on me until later on life. Well, I was more affected by HPP as an adult than my mother was. So we know that there's at least 4 generations in my family with HPP. There was my mom, she was the one that passed it on to me. Myself, I have 2 daughters with HPP and at least 2 granddaughters with HPP as well.
More behind the mystery when we come back.
Welcome back to Behind the Mystery of HPP.
As an adult, the first things I started noticing was the unusual fatigue and the headaches that put me in bed. The fatigue was awful. I could barely get through a work day. I had drove myself to a doctor's appointment one day, and I parked, and I couldn't even get inside without having to sit down on the curb and rest and catch my breath. I had a real problem with brain fog and confusion. I was driving home, roads I've been driving since I had my permit, and I was totally lost. I really lost my independence after that. In my mid-20s or so, when the headaches and the fatigue really hit hard, I really didn't know what to think because the doctor was telling me, well, you're having chronic sinus infections, quit being super mom, and here I was going through all these things, and it really wasn't at the top of my mind because I was told HPP would not affect me as an adult.
HPP is not limited to broken bones. As a multisystemic condition, it can affect many areas of the body. Patients with hypophosphatasia may experience a wide range of unexplained and debilitating symptoms that result in a frustrating journey to find relief.
Because HPP can impact a person throughout their lifetime, symptoms can change as the person gets older and can present differently during the different life stages. These clinical manifestations can change and accumulate, reflecting disease evolution and progression over time. So the manifestation of HPP largely depends on the age group we are talking about. Symptoms most common in infants and children are early closure of the skull plates, abnormal head shape, and seizures. And then we have symptoms such as fatigue, headaches, depression, sleep disturbances, and vertigo. Effects on the teeth can be painless early loss of baby or adult teeth with the root intact and receding gums. Underdeveloped ribs and breathing complications are most common in infants and children. These patients may also be at an increased risk for pneumonia. Kidneys are impacted from calcium buildup and can result in kidney stones or kidney disease. Skeletal effects can show as weak or brittle bones, rickets in children, frequent fractures occurring in the thighs, feet, toes, bowed legs or knock knees, poorly healing bone injuries, as well as persistent bone pain. Joint and muscles will manifest as muscle weakness, persistent muscle and joint pain, pseudogout, impaired mobility, and or the need for a mobility aid.
HPP can be a progressive disease. Symptoms such as recurrent fractures, pain, weakness, and fatigue can get worse over a person's life.
So I did have a lot of health issues in my early 40s, and everything was dismissed or brushed off to be something else. I went back to my primary care doctor to try and get some answers and figure things out. When I got my lab reports, he had actually circled my low ALP. He even told me if he didn't know any better, he would think I had a metabolic disorder. And I put hypophosphatasia on every new patient form that I filled out, and I wish the doctors had been more aware of HPP. They could have seen the signs, and things really came to a head. Symptoms were getting worse, mobility was getting less. I got to the point that I was pretty much bedridden and scooter bound.
I can believe that, I heard it.
My husband has been a huge support through all of this. I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't have that support system. So after many years, I was really determined to figure out what was wrong because it was obvious that it was something that was happening within the family.
All right, Kaylee, so 2 500s coming in, 100.
I want my kids and my grandkids to have the answers that they need. I wasn't going to stop until I got some answers.
Diagnosis may be delayed until adulthood, and this is due to the multisystemic nature of HPP.
So finally, my doctor sent me to an endocrinologist with a chronic fatigue syndrome diagnosis, and just luckily, he had heard of hypophosphatasia. And it's like, finally, a doctor knew what was wrong with me. It was a relief to finally have a concrete answer. So I came home from that doctor's appointment and started doing research, and I came across soft bones, and they spent so much time talking to me, putting the pieces together, and then I knew what I needed to do from there. I needed to find another doctor so we could figure out what we do now. What does this mean for my kids and my grandkids? After I started feeling better from managing my symptoms and my disease a little bit better, I decided I wanted to give back and help other people as well. So I started volunteering for Soft Bones. I helped with their online support group, answering people's questions. I just kind of rolled into actually working very part-time for Soft Bones. In 2015, we were able to go to our first national patient meeting with Soft Bones, and just having that empathy all around you, people that understand, you can't even explain how it feels.
If you feel something is wrong, if you believe there is more going on, speak to your doctor, get your ALP levels checked, and be aware if you have persistently low ALP levels.
I think that whenever you have a rare disease, there are situations where patients feel like they're the only one in the world that has this disease. When Cannon, my son, was diagnosed, I just wanted to talk to another parent, talk to somebody who had the disease, to know that there was hope. There was no advocacy group to help forge those connections between patients. So that's really the energy and passion behind starting Soft Bones, was to create those connections. When your passion and purpose in life intersect, magic happens. Helping to educate the community about this rare disease, it really gave me purpose in my life. It allowed me to tell those stories about HPP and find those patients and tell their stories as well.
When we come back, Deb will be in studio for an exclusive interview with Alexion Pharmaceuticals.
Well, welcome back to The Balancing Act Presents Behind the Mystery of HPP.
We're joined by Deb Fowler, president and founder of Soft Bones, and Wendy Erler, vice president of patient experience and advocacy at Alexion, AstraZeneca Rare Disease.
Welcome. Thank you so much for being here, ladies.
Well, thanks for having us.
Sure.
Wendy, I want to start with you. You know, before the break, we saw how Deb started Soft Bones, and congratulations to you and what you're doing. Now I just want to know what Alexion is doing to show support with this group and advocacy as well, because they need it.
Thank you so much for asking. And partnering with Soft Bones is really integral to everything we do. We work with Soft Bones to understand what are those unmet needs of HPP patients and their families, their caregivers, their parents, their siblings. Everybody comes to the table in this condition to really support and work with each other. But it's with Soft Bones that we really understand where the needs are.
That's why you're kind of looking for connections, right? And that's what helped build the framework of Soft Bones, right?
Exactly. I mean, connecting is a theme, whether we're connecting, working with Wendy and her team at Alexion, or we're connecting with patients to help them feel less alone in their disease journeys. And so when we started Soft Bones, we wanted to connect patients with hypophosphatasia from around the world and bring them together so they could have those conversations, and we could really see where the gaps were in care and work together to advocate for a better future. And so we bring together patients at our national patient meeting. We have hundreds of people who come together, and it's magical to see the two patients. They lock eyes, they just know. They know what it's like. They have that shared experience. We have regional meetings for people who aren't able to get there to help them to have that connection, share those stories, and feel less alone.
And I think that's so important because, as you know, my brother had a rare disease and I felt so alone. I spoke to you about it. And when people were able to relate with me,
absolutely,
it was almost like a turning point. Like, oh my gosh, there's somebody out there. So this partnership is really pivotal. I want to ask both of you this question. What have you taken away from this partnership?
Really the importance of community and being able to come together sort of all as one team. But it's the advocacy group that really lends the insights and brings these stories to life so that we're turning those insights into data and to be able to drive change.
So important. Deb?
Knowledge is power, and I think that creating materials and having a roadmap to follow, to be able to optimize the best care, have better conversations with doctors, have access to those resources, to really live your best life. That's what this is about. It's about changing lives and helping people to optimize their outcomes.
You've accomplished so much to date, so where do you go from here?
Well, we're really excited. There's a lot of hope for the future. And one of the areas that we've understood working with Softbones is there's a real need for adults in the HPP community who've often had lifelong symptoms but took so long to be diagnosed. So we're working on projects in that area together.
And with such a strong foundation, I think working together to find more patients. There's still a lot of patients out there that go years, decades, who haven't been diagnosed. So a lot of these patients, their symptoms may not be the same, so diagnosis is so challenging. So there's still a lot of work for us to be done. Connecting with them, giving them those resources, and helping them to have better futures and hope for the future ahead.
Well, thank you both so much for sharing and being here today, and thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you for having us.
Dynamic duo here.
Absolutely.
Determined, passionate, I love it. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Let's meet Brian, who shares his experience with HPP.
Take a look at this.
As an adult, my HPP symptoms have gotten worse. As a restaurant manager, on your feet 10 to 12 hours a day sometimes longer. There'd be several nights where I was scheduled to be the head chef that night. Trying to cook when you only have one arm, because the other one is in a cast, makes things very difficult. Several bones have been somewhat broken or partially broken. I knew this was taking a big toll on my body. Eventually, I had to quit the restaurant business. As my disease was progressing, I decided I needed to focus more on my own health. I started seeing my endocrinologist on a regular basis so he could check up, make sure I didn't have any other new pains or new broken bones. Having the right doctor can make a big difference. He listens to me and is transparent. My family is definitely my greatest support system. I know that anything I need, I can rely on any one of them at the drop of a dime. HPP patients need to make sure their lines of communication are open with their family and friends so that if you do need to slow down or there's an activity you don't want to do because you're afraid you're going to get hurt, you need to be able to tell them that.
Welcome back to Behind the Mystery of HPP.
Medical management options for HPP exist, such as prescription medications. You should reach out to your healthcare providers to learn more. Supportive therapy is also important. Things like physical therapy, treatment for broken bones as they happen, regular dental monitoring, as well as follow-up for any complications as they arise. My advice for patients is, first of all, be your own advocate. Find resources, find support. There are a lot of communities, online support groups such as Softbones, and a lot of those communities can put you in touch with the right people and find a care team that is able to provide a multidisciplinary approach for the multiple systems that can be affected in HPP.
My best advice is to anybody that is looking for answers to their medical problems is don't stop looking. Advocate for yourself. If your doctor's not listening, they're not working with you, find another doctor. If you do have hypophosphatasia, you are not alone. Get on the internet, find the patient support groups. give us a call. We're here to help.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today on The Balancing Act Presents Behind the Mystery of HPP.
And for resources and support, go to hypophosphatasia.com and softbones.org.
And of course, as always, you can go to our website, thebalancingact.com, for much more. We'll see you next time.